18th, 2023, and the meeting started at 7 p.m. here in the Aldermanic Chamber. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Jettie? Alderman Gouveia?
Here.
Alderman Camo is here. Alderman Dowd? Alderman Tebow?
Here.
Alderman Clemmons?
Here.
Alderman Karen?
Here.
Alderman Moran? And Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
You have 6 present and 3 not present.
So everybody's up to speed. We're expecting Alderman, my co-chair, Alderman Moran, very shortly. I hope. He had a family obligation he had to take, took precedence this evening. Also in attendance.
Is Tim Cummings, Administrative Services and Economic Development Director, and Carolyn Wally, Executive Director of Great American Downtown.
Okay, as per our custom, at this particular time, I will open up the meeting to public comment. Public comment is focused in the first half on items that are going to be addressed on the agenda. There is, if you're coming up to speak, please give your name and your address and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. And so therefore, I welcome you, sir. You are first.
Okay, my name is Fred Teboom, 24 Cheyenne Drive, former Alderman at Large. I'm here to speak about R-23-099, which I thought would be agenda about 2 weeks from today, but somehow got wound up in this joint meeting. 16 years ago, I pushed through the Broad Street Parkway, being the 10th vote and deciding vote in the bond. Without my vote, it wouldn't have passed. And following that, I participated in the cost reduction, design reduction, and the Broad Street Parkway basically passed because it got focused on the mill yard. That was the final deciding arguments. The city sponsored a charrette and an international competition for the entire mill yard development upon completion of the Broad Street Parkway, and I sent to this committee and the full board various links of the studies. A lot of attention was focused by then Development Director Kathy Hirsch and a lot of people about what to do about the mill yard. And none of these studies showed the densely packed 208 units, 5-story development, 5 stories, envisioned in the NIMCO study on a very congested site. None of those studies contemplated that. Not defined in the NIMCO study, that's the basis for R-23-099, is the effects on police, on fire protection, on schools, the cost for extra roadway construction, including a bridge construction, and especially not about the recreational areas for the kids in a congested area. The study entirely ignores the comprehensive approach to the mill yard.
1 minute.
It requires underground parking. It requires special road construction. Just for comparison, Mohawk Tannery, which is good on 30 acres, far greater area, developed 546 units as compared to the 208 units in this congested area. And it has recreational area, building aesthetics, access to the mill yard, next to Nashville River. None of this in this particular. There's no attention on low-income housing. If you look at the study, it talks about $2,400 to $2,800 for a studio unit, $2,800 to $3,800 for 1 bedroom, $3,400 to $5,000 for 2 bedrooms, and $5,700 to $6,580 for 3-bedroom units. That's not low income. And the developers are not looking for low-income housing. They ought to pay off the community like they do in the Mohawk Tannery. Final question: what does a NIMCO project do for economic development? What does it do for the mill yard? Take 23,099, take it off the table. Look, let me finish up.
That's what I want you to do. Please do.
Thank you. Take 23,099 off the table. Start examining some of the work that was done about a decade ago on developing the mill yard as a comprehensive development, not just some isolated, congested development in the interest of low-income housing, because it isn't ever going to be low-income housing for the cost of development in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I welcome Alderman Jettie to the group. Anybody else for public comment that would like to come up? Seeing no one at this particular time, we'll cease a portion of public comment and we'll get into presentations. This evening we have a Business and Industrial Development Authority presentation. I will recognize Mr. Tim Cummings, Administrative Services and Economic Development Director. And the topic this evening is going to be the Riverfront Project.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Yes, so you'll see on your agenda an agenda item for a presentation with the Business Industrial Development Authority. Unfortunately, a few of those members who were planning on attending this evening couldn't make it due to some work commitments, so they actually asked if we could postpone their discussion until another meeting later on in the season. So if we could, Mr. Chairman, ask that we postpone the discussion tonight on that and transition right to the Riverfront project.
Okay, without objection, everybody agrees we'll postpone the Riverfront project to another future meeting, and we'll open up discussion on the property.
The Riverfront project, if I could.
Yeah, did I say it correctly?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. So, okay. So, Mr. Chairman, yes, tonight I wanted to proceed with the discussion on giving the body here an update on the downtown Riverfront project that is typically thought of as the quote-unquote Riverwalk continuation that was started back in the early 2000s. It's been a little while since we've come back before you and provided a status update. So with us this evening, we have Amy DeRoche of the Economic Development Office and also John Vancour from Hanner Swanson. I'd like them to join me this evening and they can walk through the slides.
Absolutely. Welcome. Please come up. You can grab a chair. You need to click. There we go on my clerk. Outstanding. I guess the clerk knows, but I think you're familiar with its operation. I think you have to aim for him. There you go.
And also, it looks like this was a PDF, not a PowerPoint, so never mind.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Which button is it?
I welcome you, and anytime that you're ready.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to hand it right over to John Vancour.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim. So in the update we want to give you tonight, we're really going to focus on three topics: the status of the permitting for the overall project, where we are with design development on the various elements, and give you an update on our overall implementation schedule. So we want to go to the next slide. There we go. And so the project includes enhancements both west of Main Street and east of Main Street to complete a loop recreational trail with some park improvements along the way. We're really going to focus on the west side of Main Street tonight. Tim, and another one.
Would it be easier if the clerk did that, maybe?
Yeah. Could just.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so these are the overall improvements on the west side, and the comments, and the detailed comments are gonna be focusing on Parc de la Renaissance, Bicentennial Park, the pedestrian boardwalk next to that's proposed just west of Main Street next to the barbecue restaurant, and the new ADA ramp at the Cotton Transfer Bridge. And so one of the developments in our design development team since our last update is that we've added the firm of Weston and Sampson. Their landscape architects are working with us. When we were in before, we talked about a few aspects of the project we were going to be taking a fresh look at. And so they've joined us. And overall, in the permitting, we, in our last update, we said we had submitted the permits to New Hampshire DES and to the Army Corps of Engineers. We had gone out and met with them. We were surprised that their reaction to some elements, we were going to reinforce the riverbank to avoid erosion, sediment problems along the river. And their reaction surprised us. They said that they thought that what we were proposing wasn't really needed for the project. The impacts in order to reinforce that bank weren't warranted, was their initial reaction. So we asked them to let us take a step back on the Renaissance Park area where most of those bank improvements were, to review the rest of the project for permitting and let us take that back and do a fresh look on it. So the good news on permitting is we do have, in fact, we've received the permits for all of the project other than that park that we pulled back. So we're able to go into construction on our early priorities. We'll talk a little more about the construction schedule in a few minutes. And so that's the good news for us on permitting. In design development, part of that fresh look of Parc de la Renaissance, in minimizing or eliminating the riverbank, we also wanted to look to see if there were opportunities to enhance some of the functionality, particularly the performing arts area. We've had a stage proposed, and we also wanted to really try and get some open green space into the design. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And this is the concept that, working hand in hand with Weston Sampson's landscape architecture team, we've come up with. And we're pretty excited about this. If you look towards the left side, you can see where the stage is. The trapezoidal type shape is where the stage will be. We anticipate that there'll be an enclosure around it. And so the original design, you may recall, the stage was about halfway down this long, narrow site with the back of the stage to the river. The audience would be between the stage and the Water Street retaining wall. And here we really wanted to try to use the whole site with the performers set up to play out to the long length of the park. Concern with this, an obvious concern, is having the stage to the west. We were concerned about where the sun would be, late afternoon, early evening performances. Weston and Sampson, in their design team, had some folks do a detailed study of where the sun would be at different times during the day and during the year, and have confirmed to us that this alignment will be satisfactory, will be fine from that perspective. And so we have that stage, and in front of it you can see we have a hardscape area where there could be dancing depending on what the venue is doing. There's also a flat grass area where people could sit on blankets and watch the show, and there'll be some terraced seating in that area. On the other side, you can see one of our other goals was to get some open space. We have that oval-shaped lawn area. It's going to be a flat lawn area, so for casual recreation, whether it's picnicking or tossing a ball or tossing a frisbee, for the downtown area, it's a rare area of grass for folks to use. And so we're pretty excited about this design concept. It really hits on all of our goals, including it's avoided all of the impacts to the riverbank, and so we won't have any concerns with going forward with DES or Corps of Engineers. And so that's Parc de la Renaissance. I'd like to go to the next slide, is Bicentennial Park. And again, Weston Sampson is helping us with this as well. We've updated the preliminary design. A couple of perspectives that we really brought in wanting to maximize the benefits of the overall program. We took a hard look at the preliminary design from the perspective of accessibility. The preliminary design was fully compliant with ADA, but we took an approach that compliance isn't enough. We wanted to maximize the opportunities to have a more accessible riverfront walkway, path, recreational trail for users of all abilities. And so what that's meant is, as we've gone through and we're developing that design, we're looking to flatten out some of the locations where there were steep grades, and this is one of those areas. There's quite a bit of vertical difference from Main Street, from the back of the sidewalk, down to the westerly end of Bicentennial Park. And in trying to flatten that out, the obvious way to do that is to make the path longer. I think what Weston and Sampson's developed here is gonna prove to be successful. It's a little longer path. It lets us get a flatter slope, which makes it more accessible. But the path isn't so long that it's gonna feel like a convoluted trail. I think it'll feel very natural walking along that path. This is a early concept. During this summer, we'll be developing this further. We've still got a lot of questions to answer in finalizing this, but here too, we're pretty excited about the direction that the design is going. Go to the next slide. So this is the new ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act ramp to provide accessibility to the Cotton Transfer Bridge. There's already a ramp on the southerly side of the river. This is on the northerly side. When we gave our last update, we reported the good news that the city had secured $300,000 in federal funding. But we also tempered that with some potential bad news that because of the procedural steps we needed to do to use that money, we were afraid the timeline wouldn't work. We were afraid that it would be upwards of more than a year, maybe even up to 2 years before we'd be able to take the steps necessary to use that money. So we're back with good news tonight on that front. The city's worked closely with New Hampshire DOT and come forward with a strategy where we can use that $300,000 for this. There are still some procedural steps that have to be finished. They're being done now. And we're happy to say that we're going to be sending this out for bids from contractors in the month of May. So good news, we're able to use the $300,000 and we're able to get out, and we'll be in construction on this important accessibility link this year. Another aspect of our, that's okay. Another aspect in our review of this is to the point of trying to build in as much sustainability into the project as we can. The product that has been used for years, the standard for decking of a ramp like this, is a lumber called Ipe. It's a rainforest product. It grows, the tree that it's harvested from is a very slow-growing tree. It's the lumber that's been used on the Cotton Transfer Bridge. It's also the material that the boardwalk next to Peddler's Daughter is made from. And so we had anticipated using Ipe, but in coordination with DOT and looking at other products that may be available, we're going to move ahead with a product, Black Locust. It's grown in America. It's a much more sustainable product because the Black Locust tree grows much, much faster than the rainforest trees. So this is a much more sustainable. It's going to eliminate some of our worry about supplies during construction, and we hope it's going to be a more cost-efficient material. And so we're not just applying it here, but we're going to use that same material at all the boardwalks in the overall program. And so now if we can go to the next slide. And here we're up by Main Street, the barbecue restaurant, the boardwalk adjacent to that. And when we last gave our update, we anticipated that this boardwalk would be significantly shorter than it's shown now. It ran along the building, and then there was a relatively steep ramp down to existing ground. And if you were to go out there and walk this now, you would then go down into a low area and back up with some steep slopes. So again, from our review of accessibility, wanting to maximize the functionality, the availability of these improvements for users of all ability, we asked H.L. Turner, who's designing the boardwalk, to look at how they could flatten the profile of the ramps, improve the accessibility. So what you see in green is the boardwalk that they're actively working on to complete the design along the northerly bank, where the original preliminary design had grades as high as 7%. This will be, we're hoping less than 4 everywhere, most of it 3%, significantly more accessible, more able for people to use. And then in doing this, we're also swinging out the boardwalk that was immediately adjacent to the riverbank by the substation, what's shown in yellow. We're swinging that out further into the river. In doing so, we make it longer. It too can be flatter, more accessible, and we think there's also an aesthetic benefit to doing that as well. The reason for the two colors, what's shown in green, we can readily go out with the permit we have in hand and start construction. The yellow, we need to go back and we'll need to revise our permit application to DES. We've had an initial meeting with them to let them know this is coming. And so our game plan is to go ahead and finish the design on the green part, get it out to construction, and then go to DES with the yellow portion. H.L. Turner is working on that green portion, and this too, we've targeted to get out for soliciting bids from contractors by the end of May. And so it's an ambitious schedule, but right now today we believe we're going to have both of those early action contracts out to contractors for bids by the end of May. And then, next slide. And so back to the overall west side, other components, the Parc de la Renaissance, the Bicentennial Park, you've seen conceptual designs tonight. The final design will be completed over the course of the summer into the fall. We expect it'll be ready to go out and have contractors put their bids together by the end of the fall, December, perhaps early into the winter, but the target there is a spring start of construction for those elements, as well as the path adjacent to Clock Tower. And that section of boardwalk that we showed in yellow before, and the ancillary work to screen the substation, we're all targeting a spring 2024 start for all the improvements on the west side. And so that's the update we wanted to give you tonight, and certainly would like to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, questions from the board. Alderman Jettie, start off with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, when you showed us the photo or the sketch of the stage area, so obviously you feel that little green triangle next to the stage is enough to accommodate an audience. I'm surprised that it wouldn't be larger.
Yeah, we're actually we're going to accommodate more people than the original preliminary design did, to have them have seats where they can really see and enjoy the performance. We were concerned the earlier design had people that were sitting off to the sides. And this is a concept. One of the things is that terrace seating is not going to be so high that we can't see over it. If there's overflow, if it's a particularly popular event, the people could be back, and we need to consider that. There's trees, the landscape architect has showed trees, maybe a place we want to be careful about planting trees, so if there's a larger audience, they could be standing behind the terrace seating and still see the stage. But in studies with folks that they brought to the table, was feeling that this was an effective performing area.
Okay. Another question.
Follow up?
And you mentioned a type of wood. I didn't quite hear what type of wood you said that you were going to be using on
We're going to be using black locust.
black locust.
And
Okay.
the older wood, the rainforest product is Ipe, spelled IPA. I mean IPE, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Moran.
Thank you. It might be more of a question for Director Cummings, but in this size, have you ever been to Boarding House Park in Lowell? Is it roughly around the same size?
I would say the green space, absolutely. The stage, I think might be a little bit smaller. That's a little bit bigger in Lowell, what you're referencing.
Yeah.
That's a little bit bigger of a venue.
But the green space
stage-wise,
for the
But the green
seating.
space, absolutely. Yep.
So this might help Alderman Jardy. In Boarding House Park, I once went to a concert that was seating lawn chairs on the lawn for Weird Al Yankovic, very popular person, and it was packed. And I'm pretty sure they're probably, if that's around the same green space, that you'd be able to get everybody in there.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Boarding House Park
And
as well.
and
So
Weird
if
Al.
it's the same size, then, yeah.
Any other questions, members of the committee? Chair does have one, and that is with any of the flyways or any of the boardwalk ways. Has your company taken into a consideration of the time-to-time flooding that does occur? And can it stand up without major damage to the property?
It's absolutely an excellent question, and we're very happy. On our consulting team, the ones who designed it are H.L. Turner. H.L. Turner has designed probably every project that involved this section of the river, from doing analysis related to the Broad Street Parkway right up to the private development here, the work on the dam, the work on the hydroelectric plant. Their modeling of the river has been important in planning all the resiliency related. Most of the boardwalk areas are above, more than a foot above the flood elevation. Part of Park Renaissance is going to be just about at the flood stage. We're going to be building in terms of the boardwalks are above and will be designed accordingly. We're looking at the resiliency in any of the electrical connections and anything related to the performance areas. We're going to be specifying that the conduits, the connections, everything be resilient. So it's an excellent question. We should have included it, so thank you.
Thank you. Okay, back to any other questions by members of the committee? Okay, and seeing none, I thank you both for coming before us and giving an update this evening. Very timely. Thank you. Okay, and at this particular point, we do have an additional presentation, and we're going to continue on with Ms. Carolyn Wally, Executive Director of the Great American Downtown. Ms. Wally, I welcome you. Please come and grab a seat anywhere you wish.
She's going to need a plug over there.
Do they all have?
No.
No.
Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can I just speak on her being here briefly while she's getting set up?
Sure, absolutely.
So I had a conversation with Carolyn about the Great American Downtown, and I thought that'd be a great idea if she could come and present to the Planning and Economic Development Committee what the Great American Downtown does, because I know there was some confusion between the Great American Downtown and the Downtown Improvement Committee, and there was some confusion on that, and I thought it'd be a great idea, and I wanted Alderman Moran to reach out to her and have her come and do a presentation, so
Yes,
that's why she's here.
And now you get to be at the joints and present to both committees, more
Yeah.
people.
Double, yeah, 2 in 1. Aren't I lucky? Thank you for having me.
Well, welcome. Thank you for appearing. And at this point, I turn it over to you, so feel free to make your presentation if you're queued up.
Thank you. I am Carolyn Wally, Executive Director of Great American Downtown.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
could I just ask, could you bring your microphone closer to your, thank you.
How's this? This good?
Yep, better.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to tell you all more about Great American Downtown and what we do. A little about us. We are a 501c3 charitable organization registered with the state of New Hampshire, Great American Downtown Incorporated. Our board of directors is the decision-making body, with our executive committee taking on responsibilities as the board sees fit. Right now, mostly human resources is what executive committee handles. We're partly funded by the city. We currently receive $50,000 annually from the city, and that goes towards our overhead expenses, so we can focus on our mission. I did want to actually just hand out these papers with our mission on it. You could just write this down. Thank you. We recently changed our mission to be more compact. I think it was about 3 sentences long before, so now it's just 1 sentence. We also adopted a vision statement and some core values for some guiding principles for the organization. Just the last point here, we are unrelated to the Downtown Improvement Committee, and we are unrelated to the Chamber of Commerce. We have no chapters or sisters, and we operate independently. Just for those that don't have a copy of what I handed out there, I do have a copy here. Our mission statement is to foster a thriving and welcoming downtown community through inclusive events and partnerships. Our vision statement is for downtown to be a model for well-managed downtowns with inclusive environments and community-driven events. Our core values are respect, diversity, trust, openness, and integrity. So here is our list of our executive committee. Our president is Tommy Parnell. He's a local computer guy. He's into startups and has experience with building small business entities into larger ones. And so he's been really helpful in the infrastructure as GAP grows. Our vice president is Michael Baum. We have Kathy Snyder, Kathy Dunaher from Bar Harbor Bank. Jen McCormick is our secretary she's the director of the library. Matt Jackson is on our board of directors, along with Alyssa Gager from Purple Finch, Melissa Coppola from Vibe Yoga and Ariel Moon Yoga, Tim McIsaac, Kim McCarthy, Tim Sennett, Latha Manjaputi, and Andrew Payala right here has a little asterisk because we're voting him on tomorrow night at our full board meeting. Our major events every year are the farmers market. It goes for 22 weeks, the end of May through the end of October. Sundays, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We're really excited this year about our new location at the Nashua Public Library parking lot. We have about 30 vendors so far, including community organizations and programming. And there's room for about 70 vendors. So we're really excited to work in partnership with the library and some of their events, some of the other events that are happening in the city, like the Multicultural Festival, maybe working in partnership with the farmers market. We're really excited for the growth there. The Taste of Downtown, this will be the 27th year. It'll be held on June 7th from 6 to 8:30 p.m. And of course, the holiday stroll, always held on the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and which this year is November 25th. Other events that we do that are more community oriented is the Chocolate Stroll, which happened in February. It's the Saturday before the Valentine's Day. Downtown scarecrows, everybody makes a scarecrow, and I'm sure you guys have seen them on the light poles. Ladies' Night, Plaid Friday, Shop Small Saturday. Those are all the weekend of Thanksgiving and promoting shopping downtown for the holidays. Other initiatives that we do, we have the Downtowner. It's a weekly e-newsletter that highlights different events happening in and around downtown, your source for all things local, and you can subscribe to that on our website, which is downtownnashua.org. We also have Downtown Nashua merchandise. You may have seen them. It's kind of similar to the Patagonia logo with the Downtown Nashua and the sunset and the skyline. We're going to be having an online store opening soon, so people can buy those and represent Downtown Nashua. Another new thing this year is Humans of Downtown Nashua. We're going to be highlighting the people that hang out downtown and the population that makes up the awesome community that we have downtown. Store owners, patrons, employees, things like this. Charitable gaming, we're excited to be participating in charitable gaming on May 8th for 6 days at Boston Billiards. So grab your friends and family and come on down and support us. This is where we get a percentage of the gaming revenue from those 6 days. It's about, we get a large amount of revenue from that or funding from that. The last thing here is downtown guides. We have an initiative to create guides for new residents in downtown and new commercial businesses in downtown to how they can thrive and how they can really take advantage of what we have here. And that is all here. And I wanted to ask if anybody had any questions for downtown, for Great American Downtown. If you have any ideas for downtown or anything on your mind.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation, and I see we do have one. Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I love the Downtowner, by the way. I didn't know that came from you guys.
Oh, that's
I do
awesome.
subscribe to it, so I do find out, what's going on downtown. So that's excellent. My question is more financial. So budget season's coming up, and last year there was kind of I don't want to say it was last minute to get Great American Downtown the $50,000 that they were getting every year. Do you anticipate that you're going to be asking for the same exact this year, or is there a chance to go either way, more or less?
We're planning to get the same, the $50,000 for this year.
Awesome.
Further questions by members of the board? Alderman Jettie.
Thank you. So, so Great American Downtown, to me, has always been, I've always considered it, and I think this is true. You could correct me if I'm wrong. It's, it really goes back to, there's always been an organization started by the downtown merchants to promote downtown, to promote the businesses downtown. It's had different names over the years, and that's currently what the name is now. So, I've always thought that the primary beneficiaries of the efforts of Great American Downtown have been the downtown merchants, the retail shops and the restaurants. And so I'm wondering, I've always looked for participation from those people in supporting this organization. So it's not clear to me whether you have, memberships, whether merchants become members of Great American Downtown and whether they support Great American Downtown financially.
That's a good question.
So
Yeah.
could
So-
you clear that up for me?
Yeah, we are not a membership organization. But I do agree with you that the primary beneficiary of our organization is the downtown merchants. They're first and foremost on our mind when we plan our events. Get the foot traffic into their shops and into their restaurants. We do, we're able to do all of this with the city funding that covers our overhead expenses. And, there's a wide variety of them, but we are able to offer these services and offer the promotional services free of charge to those downtown merchants, which I think enables them to participate in our events with staffing and other resources. So we pick up the responsibility of the event coordination and anything that can enable that event. Say for the Taste of Downtown, we provide all the paper products, like the utensils and the bowls and the plates that people, and the napkins. And, for the farmer's market, we're doing something new this year is we're featuring our downtown business every week, because we do see room for opportunity there and improvement in that promoting the downtown businesses. So we'll be featuring a downtown business every week and raffling things off from them. And so yeah, they are the primary focus, I would say, when planning our events. But there is no charge or membership fee.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just to continue on with what was just being discussed, they do participate financially through sponsorships, though. And so I don't want to leave that out. So technically, they're not dues paying members, but they do have some sort of financial contribution to Great American Downtown and to the execution of the events through their sponsorships. And there's a lot of folks in the downtown area that do sponsor various things.
Right, yes, the businesses like, Main Street, Euro, was one of the smaller sponsors for the stroll. And they get their perks from being a sponsor, like being on our banner over Main Street or being on the program, their logo being on the program, on our webpage. We do a shout out on social media for them. So if they want those extra perks, they can do the sponsorship, which is open to everybody. Not just in Nashua, but everybody, nationally, corporations and all that. So yeah, if they do choose to be a sponsor, that's great, and it enables us to do more. But first and foremost, the most basic understanding of our events is that the downtown merchants don't need to pay anything to be involved.
Could I continue?
Follow up?
And so like like at the holiday stroll this year, you had, there was somebody that was, you had a horse racing
Yeah,
thing, and there were other things like that. Do those people pay in order to be able to do that?
yes,
And the people that were selling food?
Yes.
Do they pay some kind of a fee to?
yes. And that goes towards our revenue every year. We have a profit and loss statement at the end of the year, and, sometimes we do end up with a profit, sometimes we don't, and sometimes we end negative. But, we're able to keep going because we know we're going to make some revenue from the events that we do, and we can put that right back into our next event. So we kind of fund, ourselves with our events in that way. But those, people coming in, like those carnival games or food vendors, they do pay a fee, and the purpose of that is to fund our other events.
And what about the farmer's market? Do the vendors pay a fee for that?
Yes, yeah,
They do?
and the vendors for the farmer's market, it largely goes towards the promotional expenses of the farmer's market. And, all the other incidentals.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, further questions by members of the committee? Alderman Clemmons?
No, I just wanted to make a comment actually and just say that you're doing a heck of a job.
Thank you.
And you forgot to mention your newest event on there, which was the brewery.
I did forget to mention
tour.
that, yes.
So, and I thought that was a great thing, and hopefully next year that will continue to grow and become more of a thing, because we have 5 breweries downtown, and I know also Flight Center participated in that, so
Yes.
it was a good event.
Yes, Ben Clemens is referring to our downtown Nashua Craft Beer Tour that happened over the course of New Hampshire Craft Beer Week. It was 9 days long. People paid for a ticket, which got them a stamp book, and at each of the 6 participating locations, they got a stamp, which enabled them to get these offers that each of the locations were putting on for that week. It was well received, and we're excited to do it again. This is our first year doing it. So thank you, Ben, I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Did someone walk Alderman Clemmons home?
Good question.
Okay, Alderman Moran?
More of a statement, but I appreciate the work that you guys are doing downtown. I think public-private partnerships are great for stuff like this. Obviously, the city has a vested interest, or else we wouldn't provide a $50,000, basically a base grant to you guys. But I think what you guys give us in return is far greater than that for the businesses, the tax collections of meals tax and all these other things. And I think on top of it, the aesthetic that you guys bring on top of it, like this winter stroll and bring everyone downtown is just a great thing that you guys are doing.
Thank you. Thank you, appreciate that.
Alderman Theobald?
Let him go first. He had his hand up.
All right. Alderman Gouveia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just great work on a lot of what you're doing. I've attended a lot of the events, most recently the Chocolate Stroll. Thought it was a nice event downtown. The one question I have is there any sort of collaboration or partnership of working together with entities like the Downtown Improvement Committee or the Chamber of Commerce? Is there any level of kind of teamwork, if you will, on that?
Yeah, we definitely, try to keep up with the communications of the committee as a group, but individually, we're in communication with those members of the Downtown Improvement Committee. And, you know, with our growth, we're able to have more resources, and our board members are, you know, more in collaboration with that committee as well as we go on. The Chamber of Commerce, we do have a trade agreement with them. They sponsor some of our events, and we're a member of their organization, so we're able to, you know, take advantage of those resources as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Theobald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In case I don't raise my hand again, I just want to say that before my question that, you know, the holiday stroll was excellent. Great job coming out of COVID and, you know, getting that back going. It's rare, unless there's lots of beer, that Alderman Clemmons goes out. So it was great to see him at the holiday stroll. So, but my question is, so I've seen a couple businesses close recently on Main Street. And that's unfortunate. I mean, we want to go the other way, especially with the National Center for the Arts there. Does your organization, what do they do about welcoming new businesses when they arrive? And you probably don't do any of this, but how do you keep businesses there if you can? Only because, you know, I hate to see restaurants, and then there was another business that closed too. I hate to see them leave downtown, and I'm hoping that we're going to get more now that more people are going downtown. So,
Right.
What do you do with welcoming? I guess.
Right. Historically, you know, there's nothing, you know, officially that we do with that. The downtown guides, this initiative on the bottom here is something I'm trying to implement. Some sort of brochure or like PDF or something that people can look to residentially and commercially. So the businesses, you know, support through the downtown or through any of the resources in the city, connect them with those. We do work with a tech company called Placer.ai, and they work with your location services. We work with them for the stroll, and they have a really powerful platform that we're looking into further of data, how many people go to certain places, where they come from, where they go afterwards. So I think that's kind of on our mind as far as, you know, attracting businesses to downtown.
Follow up?
So you don't go to their doorstep the first day they move in and say, hey, we're a great American downtown, or?
We hope to hire some staff in the future and be able to do those great things. But right now it's more of an indirect.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Como.
Yes, thank you. I don't have a question, just a statement. Just wanted to thank you for coming in and giving the presentation. I'd like to echo the comments by my colleague from Ward 8. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the differences between your organization and the Downtown Improvement Committee and how you operate and things like that. I know I myself 2 years ago thought that the city paid $50,000 for the holiday stroll, and it was your predecessor that took the time to sit me down and explain you know, how your organization operates and things like that. So I appreciate his explanation and also your presentation. I'm a fan of information, so I'm glad when you know, more information gets out there and people don't have the wrong idea. So
Right.
Just wanted to thank you for coming in tonight and giving the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, further questions, members of the committee? Okay, before we end, I would like to say, with the usual caveats, being a former member of the Board of Directors of the Great American Downtown. But the thing is, I've rode many different directors prior to you. I think started off with Mr. Santos and Ms. Butler come to mind, and several others. And the goal seems to be the same. I mean, just a case in point of the holiday stroll. I mean, how many people do you guesstimate right now come down for that one particular event?
At least 30,000.
At least 30,000. So that's, you know, a sign of good health. And to me, it's always been, as a member of the Board of Directors, every city needs a postcard. You know, you go to college, they'll take you in the school chapel or something like that, and they'll put that on the postcard to designate what is the institution that you belong to. What is Nashua's postcard? To me, it's always been the downtown. We got a beautiful downtown. And I would like to thank you for coming this evening and with your organization, because by doing that, I think you've given the Citizens of Nashua a wonderful postcard
Thank you.
that we can put out there and make people feel welcoming. So thank you very much. So without any further questions, okay,
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And call Dad, wish him goodbye.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
Okay, communications.
There are none?
Well, we did one after the agenda was prepared. So without objections, we have a request by Fred S. T-Boom dated February 18, 2023. Reason, remarks of the R-23-099 NIMCO study. Without objections, we'll have those placed on file.
I object.
You object?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I object too, and I would actually like to take a vote on whether we accept that or not.
Okay. Okay, I'll call for the vote. Would you like a roll call or just?
Can we not discuss that? Is that something that's non-discussable?
Oh, it is discussed. Every motion is discussable.
Oh, okay. I have a question.
Okay, I'm just asking the proverbial
Oh,
question.
okay,
When we
yeah.
call for the vote, do you want it to be a roll call vote or do you want it to,
We might as well do a roll call.
roll call vote?
It'll be
Okay.
much easier on the clerk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that way, because I think we have some dissenting. Okay. All right, Alderman Tebow, thank you for being patient.
Thanks. I'm just curious why we wouldn't accept it, that's all. Sway me, I guess.
Through the chair to Alderman Clement.
Well, first of all, I haven't had an opportunity to read it. It was not given to me. I don't have a copy here on my desk, I don't believe.
I don't think anybody got a copy of it. We only-
Yeah.
No, it was only handed to the clerk.
To be honest with you, it's not something that we normally do. We don't usually accept things from citizens. We let them speak. They can email us, they can write us. But typically, unless it's, you know, I haven't seen it and I don't know what it is, and I would much rather have it. If the gentleman wants to email us, then he can do that and we can read it that way.
Okay, Alderman Moran?
I agree with Alderman Clemmons. I just do know that that particular person was sending emails to the entire board about things that seemed inappropriate, and I haven't seen this particular communication, and I would like to review it before it gets submitted into the permanent record.
Okay, I can read it verbatim if so wish, but I think it can go in that you can read it at a later date. Alderman Tebow?
Yeah, I was the pretend clerk at the time when it was handed to me, because my name was up there, so I did take it. I looked at it, I did not read it word for word, but it's basically what the citizen spoke to us earlier in the chamber. So, you know, to me, it's the same thing he said. So I can go either way, but I could certainly object to it as well and vote that way.
Okay, Alderman Como?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with my colleagues, Alderman Clemmons and Moran. This is not something we normally do. I was later on going to make a motion to accept the presentations that we were given, which is something we do normally do, but usually members of the public are invited to come speak. They can use their 3 minutes, they can email us, but it also wasn't something that was presented to us. It was just a handout that was given to us, and it's just not something that we normally do, so I don't see why we need to do that at this time either.
Okay. Alderman Jettie?
So, not surprisingly, I have a different point of view. I think that, you know, anybody can send a communication to the committee, and, you know, all we're doing is accepting it. We're not taking action on it. We're not approving it. We're not agreeing with it. And, you know, when people say that we you know, that we don't usually do this, I see it happen all the time, where communications come to us after the agenda's been prepared, and I always thought it was routinely accepted. And you know, you know, it's true that people can email us directly, and, you know, I think, you know, this person has emailed us directly, but but sending a communication, a letter to the committee, it becomes part of the record, and the public is entitled to see that, as opposed, emails that are sent to us individually, we get them, we read them, we take them into consideration, but the public doesn't know what we're getting, they don't see that. So I'm inclined to, if we get a communication and, it would just seem common courtesy to accept the communication. We're not, and I have to say that I haven't seen it either, so, but, we're not approving it, we're not doing anything, we're just receiving it. And, I think every member of the public, every citizen has the right to correspond with the committee, send the committee, their thoughts on anything that's before us. And, I think it's inappropriate to reject it. I think, we ought to accept it and consider it and take whatever action we want, however it's trying to influence us, however we feel is correct. But to reject the communication just doesn't seem right to me. So I think we should accept it.
Alderman Gaveva.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with my colleague from Ward 5. I feel the resident has a right to be heard. I believe, if I recall correctly, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, we accepted a lot of communications when we were doing the barriers for downtown, hundreds of them, if I recall correctly, and I definitely didn't have time to read every communication verbatim. I tried to read as many as I could. In this case, I don't know why it wasn't emailed to us. Would I rather have it early in an email to read it? Sure, absolutely, but I still feel the resident has a right to be heard. Do I agree with it in this case? I don't know. I haven't read it. Doesn't mean I agree or disagree with anything that's been written, but just for the record itself, I feel he has that right to be heard. So I would support making this part of the record. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Karen.
Yes, thank you. I agree with my colleague to my left and Alderman Juddy. The public it comes forward to give a speech, to say their 3 minutes, but a lot of them have given us a hard copy of what they have said for the record. So you're not doing anything different than you've ever done before. We've had a few people from the public who have handed, after they've read their little talk, they've handed it over, and it just becomes part of the minutes of the meeting. So I don't think that putting it as part of our package is going to make it, isn't telling anyone that we're in agreement with what the gentleman has said. We're just accepting his comments, and that's it.
Okay, further comment?
I just want to say I'm not disagreeing with it eventually being received. I'm just objecting to the waiver of accepting it when it wasn't been posted to the public. Everyone has a right to have it heard. I'm not saying we're rejecting it for that reason, and anyone can share things with us. I'm just objecting to the point that it was received after the deadline and not posted for the public. It sounds like it was handed out or something like that. That's what I'm objecting
Right,
to.
it was handed prior
I'm not
to the
objecting to a citizen having the right to express their views or refusing it because of their views. I just want to clarify that before I'm in the newspaper again.
No, the chair understands. I think the citizen does have some rights, and so do you, as Alderman, whether to accept or deny communication. So that's the process we're in right now. Alderman Karen.
I don't want to debate this, but the thing is,
I appreciate if you don't.
because we could be here for a while.
Exactly.
Okay. The point of public comment is for someone to make comments. Sometimes they write it down, and then they come in and they have something in their hand that they're reading. So you're not going to get it for your meeting day. You're getting it the night of the meeting, because they're putting their thoughts together as to whether they're going to come and speak before you. And I'm sure we all saw the emails and the comment that Alderman Como suggested for the gentleman to come down here and present his thoughts. the piece of paper is just to add, to show that this is what he said. That's all, you know, so I don't think it's not like Director Cummings, you know, bringing something in at the last minute because he missed the deadline. We accept those all the time, but what I'm saying is, but that's okay, you know.
Correct.
'cause it's not-
Very true and accurate statement.
That's true, right? But, you know, that's a whole different thing from the public.
Okay. I think most of the
I won't say
aldermen have already made their opinion, so we're still open for discussion, but keep in mind, I think everybody has an opinion. Alderman Gaveva?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make it quick. To put kind of how I feel about it, it is no different than what you've seen me do before up at the State House when we give
I never
verbal
been there.
testimony. And we give you a written part of our verbal testimony and you enter it into the record. To me, it's the same kind of motion of, here's our written, you guys pass it around and it gets put in the record. So that's kind of what the mindset I'm coming from.
Very good. Alderman Tebow?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, having been one of the few people to look at it, it was points as opposed to how he said the way he said it. It was just, it's similar, but it isn't a verbatim speech that he gave to us. In the past, I think what happens is maybe people have given us the copy of what they said. I don't remember ever trying to put it into the minutes. Some of the stuff we got late, especially with like the barrier stuff, it would get to Donna before the meeting, and then she would say, oh, we had some stuff that came in after the meeting. It wouldn't be somebody coming up and handing it to us. So I think that may be a little different in this case. And to be honest, because we haven't had, I don't remember us ever saying, let's scan this piece that somebody gave us that they had into, that I'm probably gonna stick with, or change my opinion and not vote for it to be in the record, so.
Okay. Further discussion? Alderman Como?
Yeah, sorry, just so that my vote doesn't confuse anybody, as has been the case numerous times now, Alderman Jettie has swayed me. So in light of the discussion, I agree, we're not endorsing the comments, we're not saying that we agree with them or anything, we're just saying that we received them, so in that light, I have no problem with it.
Right. I mean, always, the chair would just say, and I think, thank you, Alderman Gaveva, for recognizing my time at the State House. But however, we received a testimony. It's not whether we agree with it or not. By accepting the communication does not necessarily. And the thing is, it's just accepting the testimony. And that's all we should focus on right here. So without further ado, I'll call for the vote.
I withdraw my objection.
Okay, but we still already have one.
The second.
Yeah, we can still vote on it.
Yeah, we can still vote, okay?
All right.
Yeah, so your vote will be recorded on the roll call vote. Okay, but duly noted, you did withdraw your rejection. Okay. All right, very good. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Chairman, I do
Yes.
have a clarifying question. So are we voting on accepting or not accepting the communication?
This is accepting or not accepting.
Yes, so Mr. Chair, if I may, the motion that I've written down is I've got a motion by Alderman Clemmons to accept the communication received. So a yes vote would accept it, a no vote would not accept it.
Thank you.
Okay, and like I say, it has nothing to do with content, only whether to accept or not to accept. That's all we're discussing here. Okay, we're good, we're clear? Seeing that we are, will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Moran?
No.
Alderman Jettie?
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons?
No.
Alderman Gavea?
Yes.
Alderman Karen?
Yes.
Alderman Tebow?
No.
Alderman Como is a yes. Alderman O'Brien?
This is to accept it, correct? And I'm getting confused.
Yes, yes, yes,
Okay, I
accepts it.
vote to accept the communication.
So you have 5 yeas and 3 nays.
Okay, the motion passes, the communication is accepted, and I thank you all for your point of view on the matter. Okay, moving with the meeting, unfinished business.
Mr. Chair, if I may, before you move on, since we're on communications, can we accept the communication received from Carolyn Wally? And also, can we ask that the presentation on the riverfront be sent to Donna to be added to the
Yeah,
minutes?
could you, and Mr. Cummings, could you try to track down Ms. Wally too? I think the PowerPoint for the public record should be on there.
I'll make sure Donna gets a copy.
That would be grand, I thank you, so we'll accept all those communications. Without objection? Okay, so be it, thank you. Okay, unfinished business,
There is none.
new business resolutions.
Before us, we have R 23-099, adoption of the NIMCO site planning study. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Okay, we have a recommendation of final passage for Alderman Como. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none? You gotta be quicker, because I almost gavelled.
I was expecting that there would be a presentation of some kind, but
We had that last time, right? The NIMCO?
In the town before?
Yeah.
We already had that.
We had at least, I'm sorry, at least two.
You may go through the chair to
Yeah.
explain to Alderman Jettie your point of view, yes.
I think one of them I chair too, if I
Yes.
recall correctly. Yeah. I think you were here.
I should want him to do that. We're going Jettie. Okay. Yes, Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question through you to Director Cummings. Since the presentations you've given us in the various meetings, we seem to have received a flurry of emails in the last 24 to 48 hours on the NIMCOR stuff in the downtown, Mill Yard Technology Park and so forth. So my question to you is, one, is this going to be Soviet-style housing? Scratch that one. But why, can you talk a little bit about why, in the years past, there's been presentations on maybe some kind of technology park down there. So can you kind of talk about why we're going in the direction that we're going in, so that we have a clear, I guess, direction on what's going to happen down at the NIMCOR, outside of a representation?
Director Cummings?
Sure, I saw Alderman Clemens' hand, okay. If I may, Mr. Chair. Again, just for a little bit of an orientation, tonight I'm before you asking for a favorable recommendation of R 23-099. That is the resolution that essentially asks for adoption of the NIMCO site plan study. This was a planning exercise that we have undertaken over the last year or so, and even maybe a little bit longer than a year. And it basically had been presented to this body on a couple different occasions, hasn't changed from the last time it was presented to you. Now it's just going through the official process of actually being adopted. I was doing this to ensure that we actually did have consensus on the future development, because really what this is going to do is give me and others the confidence to actually go out and talk to the private sector through an RFP, make sure we were all comfortable with making certain representations of us acting in a way that the Board of Aldermen was comfortable with, because essentially a developer is going to have to submit a proposal, and I wanted to make sure we were going in the right direction. Relative to the specific question at hand, we absolutely studied the market, and a lot of what has been talked about was ideas and concepts back in 2010, 2008, 2011, 2009 time period. The world is much different today. And one of the things we did do in this planning exercise is we had a market consultant on the team. He submitted a memo which made it into the report that outlines essentially the recommendations as they saw fit, and the long and short of it is there's really no appetite today for commercial office development. Post-pandemic, the reality is more people are working from home. so you're not necessarily seeing the need for office space. Pretty much any professional real estate entity will tell you that. That combination of our rents don't support private construction, so unless we were willing to subsidize that construction in some way, i.e. give the land away for free, really this was predicated on the idea of highest and best use of the land, and that was the frame of reference that we were using to give the planning consultants as they developed this study. And ultimately, the fact is we have a need for residential housing, and that is also where the city would recoup or have the best chance of recouping its, its funds through a sale. Would you like me to talk about the Soviet-style housing?
No.
Okay.
I do have a follow-up, though.
Well, Putin might not have a job forever, you know.
I got follow-up, Mr. Chair.
Follow up, go ahead.
So that's exactly what I wanted to hear. Perfect. So the next step, we're not going to hear about this property now until you're ready to come to us with someone that is ready to develop it. Is that accurate?
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, you may.
That's correct. The next step essentially is an RFP would be issued. We would solicit the market, and we'll see what we get for responses. What I would like to do in the RFP is reference this document as a good guide as to what the preferred development would be should a developer want to pursue this, and really give some sort of direction as to what we would like. But essentially, it's open to the market, and what you're seeing here is not necessarily 100% what we're going to get. It's really an order of magnitude. It's a framework. It's, don't have an expectation that you're going to get 600 housing units. It's, you're talking about 150-ish housing units. And that's really, and that's if you want housing. If you don't want housing and you want something different, let's have that conversation. But then I'm going to tell you, you're going to need to be prepared to do certain things like give the land away for free, and be prepared to wait a really long time, because a developer is not going to do anything on spec. They're going to need to have a tenant lined up so they can receive the financing from the bank, because no bank is going to lend or underwrite on something unless something like, I'm making this up, but something like 70% of the development is secured through some sort of letter of intent that shows that there's a means to pay the note off. And that is because why? There is no market for commercial development at this point in time.
Great. Thank you so much.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. Having been on the Board of Aldermen back in 2008, 2009, when this was discussed and the Broad Street Parkway was being discussed, the speaker that was here this evening was also on the board with me at the time, and he says that it was his vote. I contend that it was my vote that got the bond passed. Regardless, it passed by 10 votes, so you could, I guess any 10 of us could say that. But the parkway, the point of the parkway was to spark development in the Mill Yard area. At the time, the thought was it was going to be commercial type development that would go in to that area. And the reason was, back then, Nashua, think about it, 2010, Nashua had a glut of housing that was available because of the housing crash. The vacancy rate, was 10% back in 2009, 2010. So now we have a vacancy rate that's less than 0.5%, and the demand is for housing. That is what the market demand is. And I think that particular area kind of lends itself to be an extension of our downtown. And one of the things that we want to do is promote more housing downtown, because that creates a more vibrant downtown. The more people that live there, the more vibrant you're going to have of a commercial center. So to me, it's one of those things where, yes, 10 years ago, we had a different vision for what was going to go in there. but times change, and we have to be able to be nimble enough to move with those times and be able to see what's going on rather than stick to our guns and say, no, this is what I want, because what ends up happening is you have a dilapidated building that sits there. Excuse me, that's the NIMCO building itself. So that's kind of the point, is you have to move along with the times. And so while I understand some of the, you know, where some of the arguments are coming from, I don't think that they necessarily, I don't think that they necessarily take into account the fact that the world has dramatically changed in the last 10 years. And so I think that, you know, this plan that we have before us is really a great opportunity for this city. It's a great opportunity to spark that kind of development that we do want in that area going forward. And though it's a little bit different, it's still my contention that the Broad Street Parkway did do what it was supposed to do, which was provide another crossing of the Nashua River, alleviate traffic off Main Street, and more importantly, and most importantly, spark development in the Mill Yard. And this is exactly what it's doing with this legislation here.
Okay. Alderman Jettie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I appreciate that Alderman Clemmons is here and to tell us that, and that he was there, you know, when the Broad Street Parkway was developed, and he can give us valuable perspective. And I do remember this report. I do remember, you know, hearing the presentation, and I remember, you know, that the report, you know, does say that that on the issue of using this property for, you know, office or light industrial, you know, it does say that there's limited market demand exacerbated by reduced space needs due to increased work from home, as Director Cummings just told us, and that you know, it gives reasons why that's not the best choice, and that it does say that residential is the best choice, that it takes fullest advantage of the site's riverfront amenity, and it lists you know, there's a whole long list of reasons why residential is the right choice. But you know, something that you know, that concerned me was as I was thinking about this, and I'm just offering this for your consideration. You know, you know, I was thinking about the Business and Industrial Development Authority and how, you know, I think their prime purpose was, you know, to attract business to the city, you know, like, you know, employers, you know, companies that would employ people, give people jobs. You know, and the last project they did was the riverfront project, Renaissance Residences, whatever the correct name, which was residential, and now the you know, the newest project they're talking about is you know, I don't think they're involved in this one, but another mill yard, you know, converting another mill yard building to residential. And it wasn't that long ago, I don't think it was that long ago, maybe it was, but you know, Tom Monahan wanted to build apartments, you know, a residential development on Simon Street, the end of Simon Street, as it passes Whipple Street. And I don't know if it was the zoning board or the planning board, but one of those boards denied him. And one of the reasons they denied him is they said, we only have a limited amount of industrial space, places for, you know, industry to come in. And we don't want to give that up, because if some industry or some factory, some company that wants to put in a factory and create jobs wants to locate here, we won't have any place to put them, and they're gonna end up in Hudson or Merrimack or wherever. So I thought about those things, and I'm wondering, here we are, the mill yard, is industrial, and we're giving that up for residential. And I'm not saying we shouldn't, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that at the old tannery site, but that's industrial that we're converting to residential. And I've read this, and I know, what the consultants say about, and I know that, the argument that, businesses say we're not gonna come to your town unless you have workers that we can draw upon, and we can't get those workers because there's no place for them to live. And so I understand that, and I understand that this is probably the best thing we should do. But what concerns me is that, the way that this was put on tonight's agenda, at relatively the last minute. So, we who have attended these sessions and have the benefit of all of this knowledge, are probably ready to make a decision. Yeah, this is the right thing to do. Let's move on with it. But I wonder about the general public, and whether the general public is aware of what we're doing. And, is it, shouldn't the general public have had more notice about this? And I think of the people, like Alderman Clemens and the other aldermen who served at this time, people like Alderman McCarthy, were on the board at that time. Kathy Hirsch was the community planning director. I have tremendous respect for those people, and they came up with a plan with the idea of this technology park. Now, for the reasons that have previously been stated, that may no longer be viable. But it would be good for those people who are, hopefully still interested in the city and interested in participating, that they would know that we're about to do this, and that they would have a chance, if they chose, to come and say, well, wait a minute, we did all this work way back then, you're making a mistake. Because I often feel, that most of us, not all of us, but most of us are relatively new to the Board of Aldermen. And there are people that were serving here before us that did a lot of work, a lot of good work, and a lot, they made a lot of, they spent a lot of time planning. And I hate to think that we, not knowing what they did or not having the benefit of what they did, except for people like Alderman Clemens, who was there, would, if they had the opportunity, would come and say, no, you should be doing this other thing. And we may not agree with them, but at least we would get the benefit of their input. So I'm wondering, Director Cummings, is this time sensitive? Do we have to pass this on? If we pass this, if we recommend this to the Board of Aldermen, they'll be voting on it next week, right? So is that important, or is there time? Do we have some time? Do we have the luxury of postponing this for another meeting or not?
Well, number one, I think that there's a pending motion. So the pending motion is for final passage. If the motion fails, then it is open for further motions.
Well, depending upon the answer I get, I may move.
That's correct.
I may move the table.
That's within your prerogative.
Right. So is it all right if I ask Director Cummings that question?
Okay, you may ask a question, but please be brief. Director Cummings.
So, again, Alderman Jettie, your question is what exactly?
Is this so time sensitive that we need to act on this tonight and move it on to the Board of Aldermen for next week's meeting? Or do we have the luxury of putting it on our agenda for the next meeting for the sole purpose of allowing the public who may want to weigh in on this? Because I really don't think that the public knows that we're even discussing this tonight, because it was put on the agenda at the last minute, so.
Director Cummings.
Sure, but I defer to Alderman Como if you would like to speak before me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to remind Alderman Jettie, this was actually on the agenda back in March, and we canceled the meeting due to weather. So this wasn't just added. This has been pending for quite some time.
Correct.
Right, and also the chair would like to remind Alderman Jettie, by state law, one particular body cannot handcuff another body, the same particular body in the future. So whatever was agreed to 20 years ago, we don't have to live by it, if by the flavor of this current board so chooses to change it. That's called being modernization. Okay, we do have a couple of questions pending, so I'll give Alderman Jettie and then we'll get back to you. Alderman Jettie.
Yeah, if I may, to Alderman Como, it's true, it was on the agenda back in March. It was canceled due to weather. The fact that it was on tonight's agenda was not posted until yesterday, I think?
No, meeting agendas have to meet a certain criteria.
Right, this was not on the agenda.
Put on late.
We got an email from Donna Graham saying this is being added to the agenda, and I think that email was sent yesterday. So
Okay.
the public.
You may exercise your right by vote. Okay.
And I also can exercise my right by discussing.
Well, Alderman Jettie, you've had several minutes here, and I have other aldermen with their hands up. So I will get back to you. I ask you to be courteous, okay?
Well, I ask you the courtesy to treat me courteously as well.
Do not challenge the chair.
I will
Little
challenge the chair
respect,
if
sir.
necessary.
Sir, we have other aldermen that choose that wish to speak that are equally have important points that they would like to have discussed.
Sure.
Thank you, sir, for being kind. Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this question goes out to anybody that wants to answer it, I guess. We've talked about this a couple of times when it was on the agenda where people could have spoke on it, I believe. So, and nobody came and nobody spoke on it. And again, all this is doing is allowing Director Cummings to go out into the market and say, hey, what do you got for us? It's not tying, I mean, that's still got to come back through us, correct? Director Cummings?
Yes.
So I don't look at it, like I said, I mean, we got a couple emails on it. I mean, it was put on late, but we have gone over it a couple of times. So that's why I think that it's probably okay to vote on. But.
Okay. Alderman Moran.
Yeah, I completely understand and respect Alderman Jettie's point of view. My question is, it's just a study. It's not binding us to actually implement anything that the study produces. And it's something that we have discussed at previous meetings. Yes, it was added late, but then the public also has an opportunity next week to come at the full board meeting to express their views on it and sway the full board to vote yes or no on it. I just don't see the purpose of holding it back further. And then, we've talked about it. We've had presentations on it. And it's not really completing an action other than soliciting input on a potential project that we might then have even more public comment about in the future.
Right, and also the chair would like to say, because we've discussed this before, and it seems to be always somebody gets confused. But when you seek an RFP, does not necessarily mean it's etched in stone, that we do have the right to accept or not to accept it. You know, we're talking the conceptual ideas. Alderman Clemmons.
Yes, the only point, so the chair makes a good point, but the only thing I would point out is that if we pass this tonight, it's pretty much asking people, we're submitting an ask for residential. And so, you know, as long as everybody understands that, it's not like we're gonna put this out there and then somebody's gonna come back and go, oh no, I wanna build an office building there. We're going out with the intention of getting a residential unit in that space, and that's what we're asking for.
Right.
So, you know, yes, we can reject anything that comes forward out of that, but just understand that the likelihood that a commercial building is going to come out of this is not going to happen, because that's not what we're asking for. So
Right.
what we're asking for when we vote on this tonight is we're asking to put, basically soliciting bids for what can you put in there for a residential project. And, you know, on that note, I was on the board back then, and I do think that despite the fact that, you know, there was a desire to have that be a commercial area, I think this is the better move.
Good. Okay.
Um,
Alderman Moran.
Thank you. I felt like I was, prior statements were arguing against tabling, but I realized that's not the motion.
No, there's no motion to table
I know,
yet.
and that would be non-debatable.
I anticipate probably there will, but,
But in general, I do believe that this is a good idea to switch the mill yard to residential. Will it look like the building that Director Cummings presented to us? Who knows? We'll find out. It might be close, might be not. But if you look 2009 to now, over a decade, things do change. Shifting to remote work was going to happen anyways. This pandemic just expedited that. And I'm not sure how many options there are for a huge industrial R&D sites to be built in that congested area. That would only be a good site for more retail or more retail type commercial buildings, if people even had the interest of doing that. And right now, just the market for commercial is so cheap that they can barely, at the low square footage rates, get them to rent out now. Why would they go build to get nothing in return, basically? And it just doesn't make sense currently. Who knows? In 10 years it could change again. Unlikely, because of where the country's drifting with remote work. But again, the residential's definitely needed. Even if we have another recession that jacks up our vacant rates, it's going to come back. That's just how real estate works when it comes to residential property.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. Yeah, and to just piggyback on that, just a little bit about the economy too, is that, Nashua is in a better spot than most places in the United States when it comes to our retail properties. So our mall is relatively healthy. Our mall is probably one of the healthiest malls in the United States. And our retail areas are probably more healthier than, I would say, 85% of the country. And part of that is just our proximity to Massachusetts and how many people still come up to Nashua because they see the benefit of no sales tax. But even if you look to the north, in Manchester and in Concord, especially, the malls up there are very distressed. And so that's the area where our commercial development's gonna go for if somebody wants to build a factory or somebody wants to build something like that. It's gonna go back into those areas. It's not gonna come back to the mill yard. It's gonna go into those retail areas. Now, Nashua's not quite there yet. We're not at the point where Concord is, where their retail is collapsed. And we're fortunate for that. But the Amazons of the world, the Walmarts, where they're delivering things right to your door, that's the future, and it's coming. Just hasn't hit us here in Nashua as it has in the face of a lot of the rest of the country. But to the point of where could we house some of this, potential, if there's a factory or something like that, it's gonna be redeveloped. You're gonna see those retail zones redeveloped into that area. And partly it's because, you're gonna get it for a song. And it's already a building that's there, you can repurpose it, that type of thing, so. That is just the reality of where we're at. And again, I support this 100%.
Okay, Alderman Como?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I also support this plan. We've been talking about this for quite some time. I remember going to town hall meetings upstairs back in the beginning. So I'm pretty comfortable with the study as it is, and I'm ready to support it. That being said, Alderman Sullivan wanted to be here tonight to ask you a question and was unfortunately unable to make it, so I told him I would ask the question on his behalf. He just wanted to know through you, Mr. Chair, to Director Cummings, if mixed-use retail residential was considered for this plot.
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, you may.
Yes, this was studied during the development of this particular report. The consultants looked at it very closely. The fact of the matter is this was not a good site for both residential and retail, all in the same building. It just didn't lend itself based on the parking requirements and the layout to be used in a true vertical mixed-use concept, but could you have some sort of horizontal mixed use on the site? The answer is yes, you could, and specifically the preferred option does show a small retail building as what you'd consider an out parcel. Again, I want to kind of keep this very qualified, that you're only talking about a 2,000 square foot, maybe 5,000 at the very most, but it's really like a 2,500 square foot structure that would be out by the tower area, and that would still leave room for residential in the rear of the site. That is how mixed use could be incorporated, and that would be suggested to the development community with this RFP that we were putting out, but the main thrust of it would be residential. I don't want to confuse the facts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Anybody else? Discussion? Alderman Jettie?
So my question through you to Director Cummings was, is this time sensitive so that we could not delay this at all?
Will you answer the question for him, please?
Certainly, I'll be happy to answer that question. I'm going to say it is time sensitive. I'm going to say we should do this, and I would ask you to take action this evening, only because this is not a new conversation. We started back in February of 2022 on this, having public meetings, having public town hall meetings, and discussing it with all the major stakeholders. And then beyond that, coming before both PEDC and infrastructure individually, and then together as this joint body, and we've had multiple presentations on this. And then ultimately, the official legislation was filed, and I don't want there to be any suggestion that we did this under the cover of darkness. This legislation has been on the docket for months now. And I guess I would put it back to you and say, when is a good time to do it? If not tonight.
Okay. Chair would like to note that the current bill, R23-099, has something like over 11 sponsors. So many of the board are familiar with it. Do you have another question, Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, no, I have a response, if I could.
Oh, go ahead.
So I am in no way accusing you of doing anything under the cover of darkness, Director Cummings. I acknowledge that this has been, that we've had, that this has been before this committee, or the Infrastructure and the Planning and Economic Development Committee before, that the legislation was, prepared back in March, I believe, that it was on the agenda for a previous meeting. that previous meeting was canceled because of weather. Now, the only thing I'm saying is that
Yeah.
that it was not put on the agenda for tonight's meeting until yesterday. And so I am just saying, I'm not accusing you of doing anything, trying to sneak anything through. I'm just saying, for the public's benefit, the public didn't know that this was on our agenda. How many members of the public are, looking at the agenda to see if it might change? We're on the committee. How many of us knew that this was going to be on tonight's agenda? We only knew about it when Donna sent us an email yesterday. So, and I understand that, that it has the support of the board and this committee, and I'm probably going to vote for it. I'm just suggesting, that the public should have the right to know that this is before us, and so. But I can read the room, Mr. Chairman, so I've made my point, and it's not been taken, so thank you.
Oh, I think you have made your point. Thank you so much for it. Okay, seeing that, no further discussion, I will call for the vote. I'm going to do it by roll call, just in case, but I think we should be all set. But
All right. Alderman Moran.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
No.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman Gouveia.
Yes.
Alderman Karen.
Yes.
Alderman Tebow.
Yes.
Alderman Cameau is a yes. Alderman O'Brien.
yes,
You have 7 yeas and 1 nay.
motion carries. Okay, when the clerk's caught up, other business before the body?
Yes, Mr. Chair, before us, we have Resolution R23-108, authorizing the sale of surplus property.
Okay, Alderman Tebow, do we have a motion?
Yeah, motion for final passage of R-23-10.
Okay, discussion on the motion?
Can bring my glasses today.
Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, I just want to explain for anyone who might be listening that all this just goes, hand in glove, if that's the right term, with the decision to develop this, to seek an RFP on the development of this property, and it just adds a small lot to the other 2 major lots that constitute this property. And it just, cleans things up so that in order to develop this property, you need this little piece as well. So it, it just goes hand in glove with it. So.
Okay, further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. New business ordinances.
Before us, we have O23-052, designating the Joyce Park Wildlife Sanctuary as city conservation land.
Alderman Jettie, do we have a motion?
I move to recommend final passage of O-23-052, and I'd like to speak to it.
Motion final passage. Alderman Jettie, you're allowed to speak on your motion.
Thank you. So this was requested by the Conservation Commission, and I, as liaison to the Conservation Commission, and Alderman Dowd, who's the alternate, and Alderman Karen, in whose ward this is located, sponsored this. And this designates the Joyce Park Wildlife Sanctuary as city conservation land. So I think Director Sullivan is here, who can provide more detail and better explain what this is doing. If he could, Mr. Chairman.
No, absolutely. Welcome, Mr. Sullivan.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Matt Sullivan, Community Development Division Director for the record. I'll speak briefly to the action before you this evening relative to the inclusion of the Joyce Park Wildlife Sanctuary within the city's listed conservation lands. Just for quick context, the city has multiple other conservation lands as well, including the Northwest Sanctuary, south of Amherst Street, and the Southwest Quadrant, which includes several conservation areas, such as the area adjacent to Udicki, Terrell, and some other significant conservation parcels that were acquired and preserved in the 2000s and 2010s. The addition of the Joyce Park Wildlife Sanctuary, I would argue, is an overdue action. The city has been in possession of this land for several decades, since really about the late 60s to early 70s, when the property was conveyed to the city as part of multiple, one transaction and one donation. The property in question is approximately 11.81, or specifically 11.81 acres, and is located at the southern terminus of Ingalls Street, to the northwest of the wastewater treatment plant, if you're aware of where that is, or 141 Burke Street, which was the former Ingersoll Rand site. It's just to the northwest of that, adjacent to what's known as the improved machinery pond on the eastern side of the community. It should be noted, and I have included a graphic for you this evening to give you a sense of the context of this property. The area in question, that 11.81 acres that I referred to, is just a portion of what's a set of conservation easements and pedestrian easements that provide access to the conservation area proper. These were secured as part of incremental efforts by the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board through redevelopment and developments that happened on these parcels adjacent to really provide an area of pedestrian access through the conservation land itself, and also to give access to the adjacent properties for folks that were working in some of these businesses or residents that lived in the area. I do want to point out, really, to be clear about why we're adding this to the list of conservation lands this evening, or making that request. Within the city of Nashua, being a conservation land unlocks a few potential opportunities for the Conservation Commission, which is obviously charged with stewardship and land preservation responsibilities. The first of which is that it allows the conservation to move forward and actually draft and adopt itself a stewardship plan for the land in question. Without the Board of Aldermen enabling this or installing this as conservation land, the commission is actually not formally charged with developing a stewardship plan for a piece of property. And so this vote and inclusion would allow them to do that. But the second part is perhaps more critical, and that is that under the structure that the city has used for conservation properties, the Conservation Commission cannot allocate funding for preservation, maintenance, and the like to a property without a stewardship plan being in place, which obviously cannot be enabled until this body takes action. So it's a couple different pieces or events that have to take place to allow for funding to be set aside. Until that takes place, what you've seen over the last few years is that we've had incremental funding requests for as little as $300 that have to come through the Board of Aldermen. And that's really not an efficient use of your time and not an efficient use of the commission's time. So again, this request to make this a conservation land will be followed by the stewardship plan, and then subsequently a request by the commission at some point in the future to actually set aside funding for stewardship of this property. I'll also just note quickly that one example of that was the 2021 trail work that took place in partnership with the Student Conservation Association that Alderman Jetty sponsored and was a strong advocate for, as were others. This has really opened up the possibility of this land for pedestrian access, and we've seen enhanced usage and access since that work was done. And so we're very excited about the opportunity to make future investment in the land in question. Happy to answer any questions that the committee may have this evening, but this is I believe, a very positive step for the commission and an opportunity for the community.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. So just a quick question. So currently this land is not being maintained by the Parks Department or anything like that?
Sure. Yes, you may respond.
Alderman Clemmons, it is not being maintained by the Parks Department. There's very little maintenance that's done, all of which is done by volunteer Conservation Commission members as needed, or on an as-needed basis. Sometimes funding is requested to take down a tree or the like.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Como.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify through you to Director Sullivan, this ordinance is just to add the area outlined in purple The areas outlined in yellow, is there, I mean, one of them, I suspect the answer is going to be pretty obvious, but then the other one, why are we not adding those as well?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Alderman Como, that's a great question. The complication is that on these properties, the city is not what we refer to as the fee owner of the property. And so designating funding to be expended on those properties is a bit more challenging because all that we have is an easement in place. For multiple of these properties, the easements are very, very small as well, particularly on the 141 Burke site, which is the site of the Ingersoll Rand factory. In our opinion, it would not be appropriate to designate that specifically as conservation area because it's not fee ownership. I will say, however, and I'm maybe setting myself up for the future request, I do think it would be appropriate if funding is requested for an improvement on the land before you this evening, that it could potentially be extended to trail improvements on those other properties where there's a conservation easement in place. But I don't believe those other lands should be included in this request.
Thank you.
Okay, the chair does have one question. Seems to be issues within the city of the homeless.
Yes.
How does conservation land come into play with the homeless situation? Does it give us more authority to assist these people along or whatever?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, it's a constant challenge, whether it's conservation land or whether it's Parks and Recreation Department controlled land. These areas provide, it's ironic to call it a wildlife sanctuary, they also provide a level of sanctuary for the unsheltered too. I will say, and I'm very thankful for this, our Parks and Recreation Department is still an active part of assisting us with some of these properties. And so while they don't actively maintain them, when we have issues, they do step in to assist on an as-needed basis. And Mr. Chair, to your question, that applies to when we find, concentrations of unhoused individuals living on these properties. Mm-hmm. We work with DPW to follow a fairly regular outreach, engagement, and safety check process. But the commission's authority here does not change the way the city approaches potential unhoused individuals that are living here. We treat it just as any other city property and work with DPW, the Public Health Department, and RISC to ensure that folks are at least being safe if they're found out there.
Okay, good. Alderman Moore.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge, and I appreciate that you use the terminology unsheltered and unhoused. I find that very appropriate versus the other language that's used to describe people who are unsheltered and unhoused. Appreciate that.
Very good. I hope I wasn't too forward with homeless.
No, that's better than some other things I've heard.
Well, I do have sometimes a slip of the tongue. All right. Any other further questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tables and committee.
There is none.
General discussion? Alderman Moran.
Thank you. I just wanted to apologize for being late. I was a few minutes late, and I appreciate I can't remember whose turn it was to chair, but it sounded like Derek was up there at some point. But I appreciate you, Alderman O'Brien, for acknowledging my text message from earlier that I'd be late and no quorums or issues. And like many discussions, many other people here are always persuaded by Alderman Jetty's debate. And I just want the general public to know that even though we might disagree with it in the end, that friction, that ability to hear other people's opinions and whether we agree with them or not, I think it's very important and healthy in a democracy. And so I appreciate your statements, even though I disagreed with them tonight.
Thank you. Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with everything that Alderman Moran just said, and I also want to add that I'm not clerking anything without Alderman Moran up there, so just saying.
Wow. I mean,
Wow.
I don't think that.
What I said was, if you're in that chair, I'm in this chair.
I mean, I knew I was bad, but that bad. I mean, come on. You know.
We have a good rapport, Alderman.
Oh, yes, we do. Give me some right here. There you go. All right. Yeah. Okay, further comment or discussion, Alderman Jetty.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say that, I'm not against the mill yard project or getting the RFP. My only concern was that it was put on the agenda at the last minute. That's not our fault. None of us control the agenda. You know, it was, you know, I acknowledge that it's been around for a long time, you know, but, you know, why it was only put on the agenda yesterday, I don't know the answer to that, but that's, you know, I was just concerned, you know, that the public who doesn't know as much as we do about what's going on here, even, you know, I have to say, I'm an alderman, you know, I get all the emails, I read them all, you know, there was something that was supposed to be on the agenda tonight that got moved to a later time, and I only found out about it by all of a sudden I realized it wasn't on the agenda. It was, you know, scheduled for a public hearing tonight, and it got moved to a different date. So I wish that, you know, that our staff could do a better job of making sure the public knows what's going to be on the agenda, you know, with enough time for them to learn about it and prepare for it and come if they want to come, or email us if they want to email us. I guarantee you, you know, most people don't know that this was on the agenda tonight, and you know, I think you voted for it for very good reasons, and I'll probably vote for it next week. But you know, I hope that that the word will get out to people, you know, who may not care, who may be 100% in favor of this. But if anybody wants to say something, they ought to have the opportunity. And that was the only thing that I was trying to accomplish, was, you know, giving the public an opportunity to know what's going on and to comment if they so chose. But thank you for putting up with me tonight. Thank
And
you.
we'll do it again and again, Alderman Jettie.
Okay, further comment, discussion? Seeing none, open up for a public comment. Seeing nobody's in the chamber, we'll cease that portion. And I think we just had remarks by Alderman, unless somebody has further addendum that they would like to put in. All right, seeing none, Alderman Como.
Mr. Chair, I would move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'll call the meeting closed at 8:58, and I thank you all.
Dog's gonna be trained.